Hi everyone, welcome back to TekkinLife, and today we will be talking about common factoring and how to do it. Now first, what is a factor or what is factoring? Well, factors are basically values or expressions that can be multiplied to produce a desired product. So for example, if you have the number 6, 3 and 2 would be a pair of factors for the number 6, as when you multiply them, they would multiply up to 6. Common factoring is one of many ways of factoring, and we will talk about other ways of factoring in other coming videos. Now, what are common factors? Well, common factors are factors that are common to two or more terms or expressions. So these common factors would divide evenly into both of the terms. So for example, a common factor between 3x and 5x is just x, because there's an x in both of them, so you can divide both of them by an x and still get a whole number. Now, what are the steps to common factoring expressions? So first of all, you're going to find the greatest common factor, in short form GCF, for all the terms in the expression. Then you're going to write the greatest common factor in front of a set of brackets. And third, you divide every term in the original expression by that greatest common factor. So then in the end, you have your greatest common factor outside the brackets, and then each quotient, basically each result, after you divide each term by the greatest common factor, that goes into the brackets in order. Finally, this is optional, but it is recommended. You check your work by applying the distributive property to your final expression. So if you did it correctly, once you distribute in the end, you should get back to your original expression. Okay, let's try out some examples. So our first example here is 7x cubed minus 14x squared plus 42x. And we basically just have to common factor this. So what's our first job? Well, let's look at these steps. We have to identify the greatest common factor for all the terms in the expression. So what I like to do is I like to start with the coefficients of the terms. So coefficients being the 7, the 14, the 42. Now, what can all these numbers be divided by evenly? Well, the correct answer is 7, right? Because you can divide 7 by 7 to get 1, negative 14 by 7 to get negative 2, and 42 by 7 to get 6. The second part of our greatest common factor would just be x. And why is that? Because every term here has at least one x. It can't be x squared or x cubed, because not all of these have at least 2 or 3 x's, but every single one has at least one x. This one has 1, this one has 2, and this one has 3. So our greatest common factor would be 7x. Now that we've identified our greatest common factor, our next step is to write it in front of a set of brackets. And then we divide all the terms in the original expression by the greatest common factor, and we write it in brackets. So this sort of comes first, where I wrote out the division here. And finally, I have the 7x on the outside, which is our greatest common factor, and then the results of each term divided by that greatest common factor. So 7x cubed divided by 7x. The 7's cancel out, that's just 1, so it's not written. And then x cubed divided by x is just x squared. And negative 14x squared over 7x is minus 2x, and then plus 42x over plus 7x is just 6. So now our common factored form is just 7x times x squared minus 2x plus 6. Let's look at the second example right here. This one is a word problem, and it will require a little bit of prior knowledge of quadratics. The path of a ball after it's thrown is modeled by the relation h equals negative 5t squared plus 35t, where t represents the number of seconds after the ball has been thrown. When will the ball hit the ground? So I just drew this little thing here to show basically what they're looking for. So there's a ball thrown from this point right here. This is the path of the ball, and we're trying to find after how long, which is labeled by the x-axis. This is basically the t variable incrementing. We're trying to find what the value of t is. In other words, how many seconds it takes for the ball to hit the ground. So here we'll also have to common factor. because common factoring is how we find zeros. And in case you don't know what zeros are basically when the parabola crosses the x-axis, otherwise known as x-intercepts. So this basically tells us when y is equal to 0, what is the x value. So when the ball hits the ground, that's given to be a 0 because the y value, the height of the ball, is going to be 0 at the ground. So when we common factor and we set each factor to 0, that gives us the values of our zeros. So let's try it out in case you don't understand. We start by writing out the original equation, and right here you can see we're determining our greatest common factor, which is negative 5t, because you can divide the first term by negative 5. Second term can also be divided by negative 5 as it's a multiple of 5, and there's a t in both of these terms. Next, we divided each term here by negative 5t, so we wrote out our negative 5t on the outside, and then we divided each term. So negative 5t squared divided by negative 5t is just t, and then 35t divided by negative 5t just gives us negative 7. So now we have negative 5t times t minus 7. And now to find our zeros, we basically set each of these factors to 0. So this is what I mean by that. Negative 5t equals 0. And now we just try to isolate t by dividing by negative 5 on both sides. And now we realize that t equals 0. So this is the first point at which the ball is at the ground, meaning that the ball was thrown from a height of 0. This is where it starts off from. And then the second value of t will give us when it lands. So t minus 7, we set that to 0. T minus 7 equals 0. Move the negative 7 to the other side, makes it positive, and that leaves us with t equals 7. So that means, therefore, the ball hits the ground after 7 seconds. Because t equals 7 is one of our zeros, meaning that the ball hits the ground at 7 seconds. So this 7 value corresponds to this point right here. I really hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something from it. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave it in the comment section down below. And once again, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.